All right. Hello and welcome back to part three of our Spiciest Salsa 2022 and 2023 episode. As we left off in the last episode, a dead tie developed between Red Dead Redemption 2 and Elden Ring.
We didn't get the chance to talk about the salsas this time or last time or the time before, but that's okay. We'll get to them probably later this time.
Yes, I'm sure we will. All right.
So excited. I've got some really spicy ones.
Yeah.
So for this one, let's just do a recap of the positions. I was previously on Red Dead Redemption as well as carbon speed dating, I believe.
Yes, and I had voted for Elden Ring.
I had also voted for Elden Ring.
That brings me to 3.
Yes,
And unfortunately, we aren't joined by Balder this time. Who knows? They might jump in the middle of the call.
Yes.
We called them like 3 times,
Due
so
to scheduling
we'll figure it out.
It's okay. But yeah, after reviewing the arguments in this last episode, I think I've decided to capitulate and give it to Elden Ring on account of its wonderful experiences and multiplayer, as well as the depth to which it had so many wow moments in its set design and the sheer breadth of its map equaled or exceeded Red Dead Redemption's. And, you know, that's one of the things that I think is a marker for games in this time period is our maps are starting to get really, really, really good. And Elden Ring is a perfect example of that.
Good maps. Also, wasn't there a update to Elden Ring recently?
The DLC.
Yes.
I don't think the DLC is out yet. I could be wrong about this.
Maybe I just heard of it.
It's hotly anticipated.
It's
yes,
not
the
out
trailers were
never
released.
mind.
Yeah, but it is coming out, which shows that it has room to grow, you know, as a game.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that should break the tie. So let's go ahead and officially rack up the score.
The score is 4 for Elden Ring and 2 for Red Dead Redemption 2. Which is funny because Elden Ring is the 4th Dark Souls game.
Yeah. All right, so that brings us swiftly on to Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3. Carbon Speed Dating, would you like to introduce Baldur's Gate 3 again? Along with any other
certainly.
revelations you may have had in the interim?
Yeah, so Baldur's Gate is I guess, turn-based. That's what the term for that kind of combat, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, turn-based action RPG taking place in D&D. You know, with a lot of choice. You know, like that was really what got me more than anything. Was it's very narrative-driven, very choice-driven, very character-driven game. At least for me, this is definitely my game of the year because it's probably my favorite game, period. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and Jacob, would you like to introduce Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah, I can take over for a bit. Since the person who brought it is away hunting dragons or something, we're sure. Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom is a sequel to one of the best games ever made, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, taking place in a heavily modified version of the same map. This action RPG takes all of the adventure that you grew to love with Breath of the Wild and adds quite possibly the most imaginative and interesting crafting, if you can call it, creation system that I've ever seen in a game, letting you glue anything to anything, up to stacking dozens of items high to create fully functional vehicles, weapons, turrets, lasers, drones, or in my case, horrible amalgamations of weird rolling wheel things. But yeah, improving on its predecessor in practically every way is a extremely worthy sequel to an already amazing game.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that they brought another layer of creativity to the Zelda space. And I think that I'm really excited about the future of Zelda going forward from this. Because if they could blend these genres, I think the sky's the limit for what this, I guess, title can encompass as far as genre goes.
Mm-hmm.
Something I really appreciated with this game, I think we've talked about it a little bit already, but they clearly took feedback from the previous game, because one of the entire main mechanic of this game is now around crafting and collecting. And while you had collecting in the first game, it kind of didn't serve a purpose. Like once you fill up all of your
Mm-hmm.
meal slots, there's no reason to ever pick up another berry or another flame
Yeah.
jelly or whatnot. So they really, they kept all of the best parts of the first game, but also included and iterated on in the best possible way.
Yeah, and it's also something that's very popular in games right now. Like I remember in like 2020 where we had the new Animal Crossing came out with all the crafting elements to it, and I think there was a couple other games that were really popular that had just crafting as a main mechanic of the game. And I was like, wow, I really hope that Tears of the Kingdom has some crafting. That would be great, huh? And then they did it, and it made me so happy.
Yeah, here's a question I'll ask about Tears of the Kingdom though. Is the map new enough? Because this is something that when I was watching you guys play this game, it felt like there wasn't quite enough to be, excited about exploring. Like, yeah, you have the Underdark or whatever it's called, and the sky areas, but the sky areas are really, isolated and self-contained and very small and very few things on it. And the Underdark is kind of largely empty. Like after you get a mechanic to be able to not be in total darkness, there's not like a whole lot of straight up exploration happening. Like I can't remember any like, standout moments in terms of exploration.
Mhm.
Where
Yeah.
with the first game, with the original map, the prospect of just walking across the map was exciting. And I feel like because they didn't
Mhm.
really change it that much, I wasn't as interested in exploring as I was in the first. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
confidently say that the new map is so different that you do get a return on that feeling of exploration
Mhm.
and feeling of unexpected surprises around corners. I'm in an area right now that is the desert area, and I recognize nearly nothing. In my opinion, it's only hints of the previous map in the above world. I agree, the underground location feels a bit empty, and it does get a bit tedious at times exploring this.
Yeah, I also think
Uh,
that. Oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
no, go ahead.
Yeah. I also really like I had that same worry going in that, oh, it's the same exact map but a new game. How are they going to make it enough gameplay to be as good as the original? And I do agree that these Sky Islands, or Skylands as we should be calling them, um, they're very spread out and they're very challenging to get to. And I feel like the challenge aspect of actually having to like fly between these islands sort of makes up for the distance and the lack of substance up there, that there's added gameplay in the challenge of getting to it. But I do agree that it's a little bit spacious. But for me, I agree with Leonard Klein that the changes that they made to the original landscape is enough that it feels like you're exploring a totally new game, and then you occasionally find things where you're like, oh, hey, I know that place. That landmark was in the other game. And so you're seeing these almost like little Easter eggs, even though it's the same map. And because they changed it both geographically and culturally, which I really enjoyed, because you're seeing
Yeah.
them rebuilding after the events of the first game. There's
Hmm.
Zelda has, in the, 5 or 6 years between the first game and this game, she has like completely changed the kingdom and like affected everyone's lives as you piece together throughout the course of the game. And I love seeing like the new places that have been built, like the little newspaper place. It's so cute and fun and adds a whole new aspect to the game. Or like new towns and cities and things that have changed with the cultural aspect of being able to actually contact the different cultures now. I felt it to be very fun to explore.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's so interesting that you say that, because maybe this is just from the perspective that I have then, because from my perspective as essentially, a backseat gamer or whatever you'd call it, where, I'm watching the game rather than actually experiencing the individual moments, it didn't feel that different. But maybe it is just that difference in player versus observer.
I could see that.
Yeah, and we did talk about that in the earlier episodes where Dixon chimed in that it is one of those that's more fun to do than it is to watch, because a lot of the nuance is kind of subtextual or feelings based.
Yeah, something I want to add, just like from a game design perspective, is a map and an environment is often only as good as the way you traverse it. And with dozens upon dozens of extremely weird ways to traverse this new map, it does end up feeling different. But yeah, possibly as a passive observer, the difference between seeing someone ride a bike across this familiar field or construct some sort of crude paddle-based walker, or just walk or use a horse or bomb jump or whatever else you want to do. That doesn't look that different. It's the same field, but from a gameplay perspective.
Yeah, it feels different for sure. I get that.
And for what it's worth, I also have not played this game. Probably the only person in the call who has not played or touched Tears of the Kingdom. And that was also my experience and my initial read was I was like, oh, it's the same map on the ground? And they're like, well, yeah, and there's Sky Islands now and the Underdark. And I'm like, okay, well, how big are those?
Well, it's so funny, too, because before this game came out, I remember having a specific talk with Sunless where where we were talking about the idea of, like, what would the sequel look like for this game? And I remember posing the question, do you think they're going to keep the same map? And, like, the answer was, like, kind of obviously they'd probably try to keep the same map because, it's the Kingdom of Hyrule. There doesn't, unless they, like, straight up wanted to travel the sea and find a new island or whatnot, which I think is kind of a corner that they might have bagged themselves into at this point. Outside of maybe, like, I don't know, a time jump or a time warp.
What's the third one gonna be?
Yeah, exactly. And, like, that's not a bad thing. The idea that they were able to make use of the same map in a creative way was part of the reason why the game was able to kind of come out when it did. You don't need
I totally agree.
like the I guess efficiency or whatever that word would be for, like, being able to make use of the tools you already have. Like, that is not in any way a bad thing. It just, like I said, from an observer's perspective, it did end up feeling a little more samey.
Oh,
I mean, that's something I'd like to talk about with this game in general, and especially its position in comparison to Baldur's Gate, because with this game, you can kind of see the hand of the producer of the creator of the game. You see the hand of the creator in the dungeons. They're all meant for you to be there, and they're all very clearly designed with the intent of you having fun.
Yeah, it's not like a lived space. It's a crafted space, and it feels that way. And that's not a bad thing.
It has some emergent gameplay, which I appreciate, but it is in a controlled environment. It all feels very cut, clean, and controlled. And sure, you can build some pretty wild stuff, but there's still, that when you do a dungeon, it's not going to really affect the dialogue of anyone nearby too much, or in ways that you wouldn't expect. You kind of know what's going to happen in the game, or at least I have so far. I haven't finished it. So I've been saved from enough spoilers from via rather Sunless skipping parts of YouTube videos. So I could be very wrong about this, but I feel like there isn't much in this game that that really triggers my love for mystery. And that's in stark contrast to Baldur's Gate, which is all about the writing and the complex relationships between these characters. And what we're looking at here is a classic example of the battle between what makes a good game. Is it if you can only have interesting gameplay versus interesting story? You'll have to forgive me on that one. I know they both have both. Then what's more important in the end, and what's more important to the game of the year?
Yeah.
See, oh,
Or I was going to offer, do we want to pick a name or think about a name for this round?
Of course, I'd forgotten.
ooh.
Yeah. Does anyone have any thoughts jumping to mind?
Something about like technical skill versus narrative, and obviously Baldur's Gate has technical skill, but like that kind of technical expertise that Zelda is bringing, in my opinion, seems to be like its strongest
Yeah.
feature.
Like,
You know, like
Wait.
they had game
sorry,
designers
continue.
talking about like this how like unimaginably impressive the physics was. So something like that.
I have a good idea, but it has a mid-level spoiler for Tears of the Kingdom in it, so I'm not going to say it.
Oh no. Thank you all. I need to really get on that, don't I?
Does it concern dragons?
It concerns dragons.
I knew it. Okay, well, mine is just a unification theme of the sense of adventure and how the different art pieces deliver differently on that promise. I think there's, I'm looking at the trailer right now for Tears of the Kingdom, and they built a stone golem with one little weird arm that is trundling towards, the goblin monolith that has been made, or a bokoblin monolith. There's like all these lasers on a spinning top wheel. Like, the things you do in Tears of the Kingdom are awesome, and you feel like you're the one doing them. You have to figure out the puzzles, you have to build the stuff. It's a very creative enterprise. And then Baldur's Gate 3, of course, is a towering achievement unto itself.
You are the character.
Yeah.
I have another idea that doesn't involve a
Dragon's
spoiler.
Dogma.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is pretty good.
I have another idea that doesn't involve a spoiler. It's dangerous to go alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot
love
play
that.
Baldur's Gate. You can play it alone, solo player, but you cannot play it alone. You have to have a party with you. It's about D&D. It's about working together with your party. And for Tears of the Kingdom, it's just a meme.
Yeah. And both of these games had so much cultural impact and weight behind them when they first came out that you never feel alone when you're playing them.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely,
love
like that. That's another great aspect. I mean, it's always hard to quantify like the outside of the game impact on enjoying the game, but the amount of joy that I saw people talking about with Baldur's Gate really, I mean, I was already in love with the game, but it really helped solidify it.
Yeah. And also, I guess with Tears of the Kingdom, you do collect your companions and you're able to summon them throughout the game and use their powers kind of like you would your party in Baldur's Gate. So it's in some ways kind of a literal similarity.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Any
When you
ideas
have
from Sunless?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like when you've got the full squad going, it definitely feels pretty D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just something along the lines of this is the RPG. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, GOAT RPG, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
These are dueling RPGs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Dueling peaks.
I mean, regardless of like what game is going to stand the test of time. I mean, this game made like obviously didn't full out make Larian Studios, but like they're expanding and doing their own thing, and now they have a lot more creative freedom as a result of the success of it as well. So like, I am beyond excited to see what they're going to be doing next.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
I'm curious to get a canvas on like, is anyone super sure about what they're gonna vote in this round? Or
I'm super not.
Yeah?
I have been anticipating having this conversation all year, and I am not at all sure what I would want to vote for.
Sure.
I am leaning towards Tears of the Kingdom because I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is doing very, very interesting things with the Zelda genre. And Baldur's Gate, of course, is amazing in its own rights and capacities, but the level of creative expression that you can do in it feels somewhat more restrained for me.
I see what you mean. It's branching choices at its heart.
Yeah.
No matter how many branching choices there are, it's still just branching choice.
Yeah, and
branching choices. Oh boy.
I was sure that I would vote for Tears of the Kingdom in this situation until I played more of Baldur's Gate 3. But I definitely had a similar experience at the beginning where I was like, "Oh yeah, it's the D&D video game. It's just D&D as a video game. And isn't the point of D&D that it's not a video game?" So I had a little bit of that at the start where it's like, well, your options are not endless. It's not a world you can explore as thoroughly as you can with a real RPG or TTRPG. But the more that I played it, the more I was like, oh no, this is genuinely fun of its own accord. Like, it's similar and it is D&D in a way. Like, it uses all the mechanics of 5e, but it's, to me, its own separate game. Like, it stands alone as a good game. If you've never played D&D, if you hate D&D, if you love D&D, it's separate to me.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing to examine how Baldur's Gate 3 plays if you have a game that you're running in D&D already versus not having a game in real life and wanting to, or never playing D&D at all and being unfamiliar with D&D as a lived physical concept.
Because that's an interesting perspective, because I didn't come to this game expecting it to be a D&D, actually. I came to this game hoping it would be an expansive choose your own adventure game, because those are the kinds of games that I enjoy playing. So, like, if you removed it's like, imagine if you removed the D&D references in Baldur's Gate, which is not that easy to do, but imagine you could do it. It isn't really a D&D campaign. It's, at the end of the day, it's just a exceedingly long, well-written choose your own adventure game that inherently choose your own adventure games are going to be limiting. And if you save scum a conversation enough, you can kind of start to see the artifacts in the conversation where they like merge branches. I don't think that's a failing. I feel like if you're playing the game in a way that is already gamey by pausing and reloading, of course you're gonna notice those you're gonna notice those edges.
I love the comparison of, even if you took all D&D references off of Baldur's Gate 3, it would still be a towering achievement.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the next plan for Larian Studios, from what I understand, is more. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be turn-based, but more big arching narrative RPG games.
There was a game called Vampire Masquerade Bloodlines, which was classically recognized as one of the last games of an era with truly branching writing. And there was a lot of it was always mentioned with an air of disappointment around modern video games, in that they didn't truly have a story, and your interactions with it didn't actually change the world in the ways that players hoped it would. And definitely. I hope that this game is the signal of a change for that.
No, definitely. I think you're mentioning a great point too, which is that, like, I love choose your own adventure games. I don't like procedural narrative games where it doesn't matter what you do. Like, I think that the fact that it is more constrained is actually a strength. Like, there are these games that are supposed to be like endless games, games where they'll generate I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's essentially a game where, like, they'll generate a random mystery for you to solve. And as someone who loves mysteries, I'm not terribly interested in that, because actually what I'm looking for is not any mystery. I'm looking for a well-crafted one. Like, I've watched enough mysteries in my life to know all of the things that, a bare minimum mystery story needs to be, and they're not terribly interesting.
Yeah. I'm curious about Rather Sunless's thought process on this choice. What are you leaning more towards?
Oh, I'm voting for Baldur's Gate 3, and it's not super close. Just by virtue of enduring cultural impact and what these mean for games going forward. Like, Tears of the Kingdom is an incredible achievement. Don't Do not get me wrong. As a game developer, what they managed to accomplish in that timeline is impressive.
And on the Switch too.
Yeah.
On the Switch,
still
running
on the Switch.
at a near constant frame rate with only a few dips here and there, like that's really, really, really impressive stuff. It's a beautiful game, and the crafting is shockingly good.
Yeah, their physics engine is great.
But Baldur's Gate 3 is just like the first good video game narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
in that it kind of sets a new bar for what good is.
Also, I would argue, and this is an important thing that I've noticed for games in general, which is an important game narrative. Because there's plenty of like Last of Us, which is a good narrative, but like it doesn't need to be a game. Like in fact, they made a TV show out of it. But like you can't make it like my argument is that, especially when it comes to games, something that's like a jewel of its genre, something that can't be translated. This is something that the writers of the comic series Saga said, where they wanted to make a comic that couldn't just be a TV show. They're like, it can't be adapted because, first off, I don't want it to be adapted, but also it would lose what makes it special. And I feel like that's exactly what the case is with Baldur's Gate. It's a great game narrative, and that's not derogatory. That's holding it up to a higher standard.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The ability to have choice in it is so crucial.
There are tons of games out there with great narratives in them, but most of them would also be just a really good miniseries or movie or TV show.
And I have watched them, and they are.
There's for every different form of art medium, there's a different way to use that canvas. It's the same reason we didn't get rid of painting when we are pretty good at photography now. You can tell different stories using different artistic mediums, and using your medium's advantages in order to help tell your story is what makes good art. And I get the impression, and if I'm wrong here, that I'm not voting for Baldur's Gate, that Baldur's Gate uses its canvas particularly well in order to tell a story that can only be told in this form.
Agreed. And I'm not saying Baldur's Gate has no bugs in it. I spent the first, 20 hours of the game on my old computer, and I could watch the environment flicker in. And all my characters did was to just slide around doing T-poses rather than the walking animation. And I still had a great time. It didn't get in the way of my experience of the game.
Yeah. To boil it down, the difference between the two is that Tears of the Kingdom is another great game. And I've played dozens of those. Not to say it's not great, not to say it's boring, but it is another great game.
Yes.
But Baldur's Gate 3 actively pushes the envelope.
Yes. You're hitting on a thing that I've been wanting to say, which is that I feel like Tears of the Kingdom is like the crown achievement of its genre. It's like, this is the open world action adventure Zelda game. This is they perfected and polished this version of Zelda and this genre of game. It's like a crown jewel, whereas Baldur's Gate 3 is like the spark of a new genre, and it's opening the doors for more things to be done like it. And I don't know which one of those is better.
Yeah. I would say Baldur's Gate 3 rather than starting a new one, because of course Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2 exist. But it is the codifier, if that makes sense. It is the Halo of FPSs.
I was gonna say, but Divinity's confusing.
Well, and there's something that we talked about before, which is when a niche genre or a genre that's kind of hard to get into finally gets good enough that it starts cracking into that mainstream audience where people are like, oh, this is actually amazing, and has become accessible enough to learn that it hits that mainstream feel.
I'd like to do a vote.
All right.
I think it's time.
I don't think I'm ready.
Yeah,
that's fair.
You can go last and make the important decision.
Now, just like last time.
In that case, I'll tell you why you should vote for Baldur's Gate, and it's because Baldur's Gate has written story moments that are more memorable than the individual moment-to-moment gameplay of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
You have not finished
remember-
the story of Zelda's Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay.
I have
What?
played
Okay, fair.
over 80 hours of Baldur's Gate, and I've played maybe, I don't know, I'd actually have to check for Tears of the Kingdom. I'm nearly done with the story of Tears of the Kingdom, and I've still played more of Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate has not made me cry once. Tears of the Kingdom has made me sob once, at least.
Wow.
Yeah.
I really have to play more. This is great.
It has made me cry, which I don't think even Breath of the Wild made me cry. And I really hope, and I assume that Baldur's Gate, probably after I get past Act 1 finally, I think that Baldur's Gate most likely will make me cry. So I'm not saying it hasn't. I'm just saying that it hasn't in 80 hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
I think
I'll say this
they
when it
both
comes
have
to
that potential.
Yeah, I'll say this when it comes to meaningful story moments though for Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 has affected enough people close enough like that I personally know to such a degree that it like made them start writing again.
Aw.
Oh, that's so good. That's so beautiful.
Like, they love it to the point of invention, right?
Yeah.
Loving things to the point of fan fiction is
especially
a very, very wonderful rule of thumb for media quality.
Actually,
especially fan
You should
And
see my
also
Ganondorf Link
kind of a
fanfiction.
bad. Actually, you know what? I take that back. There's a lot of fan fiction that I don't really understand, and like I don't really know who One Direction is. Like if he is, I think he's a singer. And
But
I feel like it makes sense in
Yeah,
context.
they're very involved in the Purge, from what I understand. From what I read.
It's probably a singer in the Purge universe.
Though I think perhaps another story point that I think is in favor of Baldur's Gate, like I was saying, I really like how Tears of the Kingdom expands on sort of what was left after the first game, and how having Zelda back in the world kind of changes things for the better, and how she changed the world in little ways, sort of here and there, butterfly effect. And I think it's a great story, but I feel like it's an excellent story if you know Legend of Zelda, and if you've played all the previous games and you know these characters and you love these characters, it's a great story. But Baldur's Gate, nobody goes in knowing these characters. Like, you might know some D&D lore, you might know who the Githyanki are, you might know stories about Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate, but all of these characters are new and unique, and we've never met them, and we fall in love with all of them. So I think that's, like, if you just isolate Tears of the Kingdom's story, it's good, but the characters don't stand on their own the way that they do in Baldur's Gate.
Also, I'd like to point something out. Due to the way this conversation is shaken out, Baldur's Gate 3 is standing strong against Tears of the Kingdom, and the only thing we have discussed is how good its story is. And
I also like its combat.
But
I do.
No. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying only on the strength of its story. Standing against everything that Tears of the Kingdom brings to the table.
Very fair.
I also think they do like the turn-based combat is quite enjoyable. I immediately upped the difficulty once I started playing, just because I liked the combat so much. Because I don't normally play games on ultra hard difficulty whatnot, but I did for this one.
I'll say this: the interface and combat is the thing that turned me away from Baldur's Gate, because I took one look at Cora's deft interaction with these lengthy menu systems, and I'm like, fun? This is fun for you? Okay, sure.
I mean, I will say that I did not in any way know how to organize it. I found out 100 hours in how to organize the menu, so everything was just where it started.
After a certain amount of project management skill and organizational philosophy, it can be a lot more fun.
It's not that much. If you sat with it for I think even 10 minutes, you could reorganize it to be. Also remember, I'm playing the classes that I play almost exclusively are magic classes, which are 1,000 times more complicated than if you wanted to do, say, a monk or a fighter, or whenever I had Karlak on my team, her turn was all right, I'll hit the person. I'm like, so much easier.
Yeah. The life of a barbarian, to hit or not to hit.
And speaking of gameplay for Baldur's Gate 3, I had a very, very different experience with gameplay in like solo mode versus like multiplayer mode.
Yes.
Whereas I feel like multiplayer, and to be fair, I only played the multiplayer like when it was still in early access, so maybe this is a bad example. But it was fun, but it was like, all right, do you want to go play D&D now? Because that would be more fun.
See.
But playing the solo player after the full game's release and after just like actually being able to sink your teeth in with solo player is so much more satisfying than being able to, I feel like for such a story-driven game, splitting the story between a party of players is really unsatisfying.
I actually think that was kind of a mistake on their part. Like, I know why they did it, because when I played Divinity was the most played game I had done before Baldur's Gate, and that's because exclusively that I was able to play it with somebody else. Like, that's what made the game enjoyable for me, because there wasn't a story to hold up for me, in my opinion. Maybe somebody loves Divinity, but I had a really hard time following the plot because it was really thinking that I knew Dungeons and Dragons, and nope, I did not. So, I know why they did it, but I actually think that would really dilute the game. I think it's a good decision logistically, but I think it's a mistake for every other part of the game.
Yeah.
I think the way that it was implemented in multiplayer could have been altered or changed or workshopped in relation to its cutscenes. But on the other hand, Zelda doesn't even have a multiplayer. So
that's true.
Loses there.
Right? Right? See, when we're comparing them.
My vote goes to Baldur's Gate 3 with the story of a wildly good book and the interface of a Jira administrator.
I'll say that my vote clearly goes to Baldur's Gate because for lack of details, it was the first game that actually I understood what people meant when they this got me through a hard time.
Yeah.
Because that's how I felt with Baldur's Gate.
Oh wow.
I had a hard year, and truly moments in Baldur's Gate made it work for me. It made it so much better. So it really impacted me in that regard.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm still on Tears of the Kingdom. There's an argument that the Ludo narrative that you make in Elden Ring, equaled or exceeded the story of Red Dead. I don't think that I think Baldur's Gate is above that in some way, where the written story of Baldur's Gate is probably better than what I could have made. But Tears of the Kingdom lets me build cool robots with magic glue, and that's just awesome.
The creativity of it's very satisfying.
It's Minecraft, and it's Minecraft Zelda, and it's amazing.
It's beautiful. I have another thing that I've been saving to say for the Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate duel that I saved from previous rounds because it's more of a thing between the two of them, which I think we touched on this a little bit before, but when it comes to glitches, they both had glitches upon release, but Zelda's being Nintendo were teeny tiny, and I feel like Baldur's Gate's glitches were oh, you're telling me that half of the playable character races can't interact with the romance scenes in a dating sim game? You're telling me that nobody tested that? Nobody thought to animate that? Until the game's release? What?
Yeah. I'm curious to wonder. I do wonder why that happened. If I were to guess, just based on, my own experience with software, my guess is they knew, and it was on the issues list. But it didn't keep they probably did some playtesting and knew the number of people that were playing and who they played as. So they probably prioritized things like most players play as a human, most players play as an elf, or most players play as a half elf, whatnot. My guess is just the way that it played out is the sheer scope of Baldur's Gate meant they had to prioritize somewhere.
Yeah.
And it is 1,000% a shame that is exactly what happened. But I suspect, like I said, it was on an issues list on the backlog.
Yeah.
They got to.
And like I said, Nintendo, one of the biggest studios in the world versus Larian.
And a sequel too. Remember that.
That's
they were
very
able
true.
to work from a lot of their base backlog.
Yeah.
Outside of their physics system.
There was one bad glitch that I encountered like the first week of Tears of the Kingdom, and it's that your horse can sometimes despawn if you talk to the sign guy while riding an unregistered horse, which sucks. And I lost my first horse.
Oh.
Oh,
I know, I would never forgive them.
Oh.
But that was like the first couple of days of release, and they patched that out like moments later. And Larian is still patching Baldur's Gate, which I appreciate. They're doing updates, they're doing patches. I don't think Nintendo is doing updates and patches for Tears of the Kingdom less than a year later.
Certainly
Yeah.
not the
No.
kissing patches that have been done
Yeah.
for Baldur's Gate.
No
Mhm.
kissing patches in Zelda.
Yeah. See, Link
Yeah.
starts short, so
Mhm.
I mean, I will say, and this is not a slight against Tears of the Kingdom because of the, they're doing a new physics engine, but I will say that Breath of the Wild, I never saw a single glitch for that game. It took me like 2 years before I even
Yeah.
saw a video of a glitch for Tears of the Kingdom, like a proper glitch. And I did, in fact, see some glitches in Tears of the Kingdom, just because it's a new physics engine. You're going to be able to do a lot more than the software folks were going to predict, just inherently by the building mechanics. So, yeah.
Yeah, like Tears of the Kingdom had bones to work on with Breath of the Wild. They had an extremely well-funded and like well-staffed studio, so I'm not surprised that it was pretty glitchless. I guess I was just like when Baldur's Gate was up against Tears of the Kingdom for Game of the Year everywhere, like these are the two games that everybody's been talking about last year. People were talking about them as if they were of similar quality on release, which I just disagree with. I do think that Baldur's
That's a good
Gate is a
point.
fantastic game with fantastic scope and depth, but I do not think that they were on the same glitchless quality upon release.
Agreed. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to that initial question of, what makes a good game? Does a good game have to be totally glitchless?
Yeah.
Like, is
That's
that a quality? Is that a metric? Or at least is that a unequal metric to all the other things we've been talking about?
Yeah.
because if that is the metric, a lot of these games are in trouble.
Yeah.
Red Dead is going to struggle
Elden
a bit
Ring
there.
certainly wouldn't escape scrutiny.
Yeah, and I do think like that being said, I wanted to just like air my grievances towards Baldur's Gate
Yeah.
3. But I remember last summer when Breath of the Wild came out, it was like all I wanted to play or think about for about 2.5 months until I started playing Baldur's Gate 3. And that then became the thing that I was thinking about and playing every day for another 2, maybe 3.5 months.
Do you think
And-
the opposite would have happened? Do you think if you had been playing Baldur's Gate, you would have swapped to Tears of the Kingdom?
That's a very good question,
That's
actually.
a great question. I mean, for me, I think yes. Partly because, I'm currently on like a 6-month break from Baldur's Gate because of the menus and because of some of the inventory issues and some of the glitches that I wanted to get cleared up first. And now they have been. It's a great, as we talked about in the last episode, many of these issues have been fixed.
Everything you ran into in your original playthrough that I remember you mentioning to me has since been patched.
Yeah. So that's the thing is like they're both obviously amazing games. I think there is an argument to be made that Baldur's Gate 3 defined the year.
Yeah.
But I also, maybe the contrarian in me wants to remind everyone that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, when it came out, controlled the world conversation for at least 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And then Baldur's Gate came out.
That's true.
No, but literally, that's exactly what happened. I watched it happen.
All right,
I was
we gotta
gonna
get
say,
a vote in.
Yeah, we gotta
Yeah.
go.
Okay. So that being said, wanting to air my grievances out about Baldur's Gate 3, I do think that it is still going to get my vote because we knew that Tears of the Kingdom was going to be amazing. We knew that Breath of the Wild was an 11 out of 10 game, and then Tears of the Kingdom comes out and is like a 12 out of 10.
Yep.
I didn't think they could do it, but they did. But none of us were, at least I wasn't expecting Baldur's Gate to be as amazing as it is. I wasn't expecting
Agreed.
it to be so gripping and for it to be one of those games where like every minute that I'm at work, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do when I get to play that game again.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, it was until
Such a good
Clever
feeling.
Diversion's let's play of it that I actually was able to see the game and realize, oh my god, I need the game right now. And then while watching the stream, I bought the game.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that should wrap it up. What's our count, Line Arc Line?
Well, I think we're a score short. Has Rather Sunless pitched their score?
Yeah, I voted first.
Baldur's Gate.
Oh,
Baldur's
okay.
Gate 3.
Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah. In that case, it is 4-1 in Baldur's Gate's favor.
It was very, very close.
Brings
for
us
me,
to our
yes.
final round, which is going to be a doozy.
Yeah.
Sorry, just real quick, Line Arc Line. Are you updating it on the website for the bracket? Because I don't think I'm getting the updates.
Maybe refresh the page.
Yes. I
Yay,
just
there it
did.
is.
Okay, great.
Nice.
Technical difficulty solved.
All right,
Mhm.
so
Okay.
this is the dreaded matchup.
I would
Well,
like
hold
to,
on.
I would like to propose an idea.
We have to take a look. Before our final round, we have honorable mentions.
Yes.
But what is your recommendation?
Oh, for the salsa?
Oh, my proposed idea actually for this final round, and take this as like I do still want to talk about these games and watch them have a face-off in the ring of our salsa challenge, but also we are doing 2 years of Game Awards for this Besties. And I think there is no game better to represent 2022 than Elden Ring, just as I think there is no game better to represent 2023 than Baldur's Gate and Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes.
But so I personally think that having these two be our besties for 2022 and subsequently 2023, that would make me filled with joy. But I also want to see them face off.
Yeah, I mean, we could give a tacit victory and then like do an all-stars round where they kind of Highlander into each other. You know, there can only be one, even though they're both winners.
There's no choice. There's
famously only one person
winner.
wins in Highlanders.
Yeah, the other one eats the other one's heart, I think is how it goes, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to choose one as the better game.
I mean, we could also just do kind of a participation award scenario.
It's late. It's 10 p.m.
Yeah, they were both games, right?
There were games in 2023.
Well,
one of the games of 2023.
And that's it.
Baldur's Gate.
Yes.
I do like the idea of talking about honorable mentions real quick. We'll just, maybe just like a quick 2 or 3 sentences. I'm just curious about folks' honorable mentions before we get into the last long talk.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking at
we did
Version's honorable mentions. They have only one more than I do.
Ooh.
We could spend a lot of time on honorable mentions. There's a lot of honor.
Well, that's why. Yeah, let's keep it short.
Yeah.
Just like
what you're. Some of mine.
I'll say too. Like, I'd be curious to know like what the game is, why you wanted to include it as an honorable mention, and why it wasn't your game you brought. I think would
absolutely.
Do it.
So I'll just go real quick. FTL is a request from Zeus because we played a few FTL matches super late at night, and it was like that's how our friendship formed initially, and it's the reason I'm here. And you know, it's a game that's very important to me, saved my life. There's the game The Witness. Where Sean and I, a good chunk of last year, would just play The Witness out in the living room, and everyone had a great time doing the puzzles. It's a fantastic intellectual visual puzzle game, and its counterpart, The Looker, which is a parody of The Witness, which is even more hilarious. I got through God of War, and it got me back into single-player gaming, and it was really good. I love bringing actual adult emotional maturity to masculine video game spaces. I think that has a huge potential for our society and is desperately needed in the aspect to advance feminism. Total War Warhammer 3 was a fantastic game that hit a rough patch recently or last year in the summer, but it is the culmination of Total Warhammer 1 and 2, which has controlled my strategy life for the last 6 years straight. It's super good. We all played Remnant 2, and it was really, really funny and good.
Clementine.
No. Until
99% of it was great.
That last cutscene where I brought it for Worsties. And then to Rather Sunless's great and enduring legacy of getting me to actually play good single-player games, Monster Hunter Rise. Rather Sunless shanghaied me into playing Monster Hunter Rise, and it was a fantastic growth experience for me.
Isn't it a multiplayer game?
The Monster Hunter series. It is. You can hunt with friends. It's fantastic. Monster Hunter as a series is incredible. I think it won our first Besties or our second Besties. And that is it for me. Shaunasaur?
Yes, so I only wrote 2 down because I didn't want to talk about every game that I love, which I would. The first game that I wanted to bring as a honorable mention is Night in the Woods, which I can't believe that I didn't play this game sooner. It's a wonderful little game, very story-driven, hilarious writing, replayability. It has a really good message, I feel like, for just like millennials and people who are sick and tired of just capitalism, and it's got cute little forest animals and a really fun message and a mystery. It's a great little game. If you haven't played it, highly recommend.
It's super funny.
Really funny, really cute, really
Great
sad.
music.
Yeah, it's good. A good hard hitter. I also wanted to talk about Pokemon Arceus, which I think is one of the, if not the best Pokemon game that has come out in the past decade and change, because it finally does the thing that I've always wanted Pokemon to do, which is let you just be Professor Oak. Let me go out into the wild and catch Pokemon just to do research on them. Let me learn about them in the wild. Let me catch them like they're a new species that's never been seen before. And that's what Pokemon Arceus is. It's open-ish world. It's as open world as I think it needs to be a Pokemon game. And they do the thing that they've been trying to do forever, which is to break the Pokemon formula. Yeah, enjoyed that one quite a lot.
Awesome.
I wanted to mention the Myst games, but I'm going to bring them next year because Riven is being remade, and I'm gonna save my comments for the remakes. So,
all right, Sunless, you're up.
Yeah, I was gonna bring God of War, but that was mentioned. I do want to bring up that it has one of the best AI companions in all of gaming. Period. Because he really feels like a character, and you should play it even just for that. I want to bring up Horizon Zero Dawn, the PC port, heralding a new and great time in Sony exclusives coming to PC Master Race. And what a good port of it, too. It runs great. Kena Bridge of Spirits is a little indie third-person action adventure. It's cute. It's beautiful. Lets you dress up your little coal sprites in funny hats. And it's made by a tiny little indie team of like cutscene guys. So all the camera work is phenomenal. But it's a good game too. I want to talk about Returnal, which I played through all of co-op, almost all co-op.
We played that together,
and it was not the game I expected it to be when I picked it up, but it was a really, really good game. The Geiger-esque architecture and the super fluid third-person shooter gameplay and the Metroidvania style like roguelite fusion progression of it. So good. You owe it to yourself to play it just to look at it, honestly. Ace Combat 7, the second best album to ever come with a game attached, second only to Doom, and an incredible arcade flight sim / anti-war story, all tied up in one excellent playing game. And then, in honor of one of Hale Noxid's things that he wanted to bring but is not here to bring, I must bring up Darktide, Warhammer 40k Darktide. Also, an excellent piece of music with a game attached. One of the most fun co-op action games made, period. One of the best 40k games ever. Not that that's a high bar. And just an altogether wonderful, crunchy, satisfying action game. Ain't nothing has ever done a bolter like Darktide did.
Yep. And I want to bring up, it's even better than Vermintide 2. And I love Fat Shark for making Vermintide 2. Vermintide 2 took several years of my life. And I haven't gone back to it because I've been playing Darktide, if that says how good Darktide is.
All right, Carbon Speed Dating.
All right, yeah, definitely. So Overboard is a very cute
very short, or kind of short. It's interesting. Choose your own adventure game where you play as a woman who murdered her husband and is trying to get away with it, and you are confronted by a Perot-like detective. They changed just enough, copyright friendly. But you have to you're essentially in a pseudo time loop. So the actual loop of the day of you trying to get away with murder or failing or succeeding, and there are degrees of failure and degrees of succeeding, and you just work your way through. You get to know people's schedules. You get to know what people are going to ask for, what kind of evidence you're leaving behind. You don't even realize. Very interesting game. Before Baldur's Gate came out, this was actually the game I was going to bring. So very fun. I enjoyed it. I believe I've 100%ed it at this point. Everyone should play it. I think it's even on sale right now.
Nice.
Nice.
Curious Expeditions 2. This is a great little, I guess, like kind of a roguelike game where essentially you just go out onto mini little adventures. It's got a kind of 1850s sort of exploration style with steampunk. It's a very fun little game. I've always enjoyed playing this game. I kind of struggle to play any game that's not on a controller though, so I haven't played as much of this recently. Card Shark is a game that I want to love so much, but it is too hard for me. I am not good enough at duplicity to be able to play this game. Although I will say that for folks that are interested in Pentiment, very very similar art style in the sense of like an extremely beautiful, very time period accurate kind of French. I want to say like late 1800s French art style. Very beautiful game. Love this game. Need to watch a playthrough of it because the story looked incredible, but I just was not good enough to play this game. So Road 96 is an interesting game. It is an interesting. Essentially, it is meant to be a choose your own adventure game that's pseudo procedural in the sense of different events can happen. So they have the way I'd describe this game is imagine you have 5 different puzzle pieces or 5 different puzzles that are each 500 pieces large. They have the same mold, and imagine you take them all, you put them into a box, and you just shake it. And then you put the puzzle together. This is sort of what the game ends up being, where they have a lot of interesting ideas, and I do like how they connect and interconnect all of the characters to one another. But I felt like it kind of came short where you could see the edges really easily. That's what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like something like with Baldur's Gate where like if I reload and then try a slightly different conversation, I'll see, oh, they're using the same conversation here. It's like, nah, it's pretty apparent pretty early on. Like I said, I wanted to like it. I liked plenty of the elements of it. It had a strangely intriguing like setup that I didn't really see them resolve that much, but I liked the parts that I saw. But
what was the plot of that one? I'm maybe mixing it with something else.
Yeah, so the plot of this one is a little strange. So essentially, from what I understand, it has been a minute since I played. There are teenagers going missing. There's like this pseudo dystopian, or I shouldn't say pseudo, it was straight up dystopian kind of United States where teenagers are kind of illegal. Like it's kind of a confusing plot. But like I said, it's very, so I will say that that's something that I liked about the story, which is it's very much you just pick it up as you go. Like I think part of the problem that I came up to when I'm trying to describe the plot is because of that like puzzle aspect. It was a little hard to follow the plot. There is a plot.
Yeah, it talks a decent about fascism and these how toxic government entities make themselves appealing to certain types of people.
Yeah.
And how some people fight that and try to escape from it.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description. And there's a lot of fun, like I said, there's a lot of fun parts to it. It does feel like a bit of a game where if I could ignore the plot a little bit more, like I was able to do with, say, Divinity, I could enjoy the game a little bit more for its procedural elements. But I don't really think procedural and strong narrative go together. I think they're kind of opposites on, an axes, and you can't really cross those in any way narratively that I think works very well. But very interesting experiment. I would say give it a shot if you haven't played it. It's not a terribly long game. It has kind of a pseudo roguelike element to it, where you escape, and then the new game starts with a new teenager, and you can try other ways of interacting with the plot.
It is
So,
neat. If you do succeed on a run, you come across mentions of, an escapee.
yeah.
In following runs, and each run has this overarching. You're getting closer to a very relevant date in the history of this world. It's very interesting because it's one of these games where you discover more about the world through these very interpersonal interactions with other well-written characters.
Yeah, and I would say it's the sort of game that I feel like I'm perhaps being a little bit more negative than I actually think. Like I am very positive about this game, I actually think that it was a fun game, but I just think that it inherently was going to run into issues that I remember when I saw the trailer, I'm like, I'm curious to see how they're going to solve that problem. And the answer was they don't.
Yeah.
So I would say give it a shot if you haven't, but it's certainly like I said, it has some interesting ideas. I would always the next game I want to mention is Wildermyth. Actually, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's Wildermyth. I love this game deeply. I play it constantly when I am playing with a friend, and it is a how do I describe this? It is essentially a turn-based game that has this interesting mechanic where the characters you have can grow and learn and retire, so you can play as like their children and stuff like that. And it does have a plot, but I would argue it's more fun to sort of make up your own plot, and that's what I've done. I really enjoy the interesting way of essentially there's fun turn-based combat. That's what I'll say. And the game has just actually released a DLC, and I bought it, within 20 minutes of the DLC being released. So
Oh,
like
wow.
I am very excited about this game. I've played this game a lot, and I will continue to. I played it when I was at a conference this year. Actually, we got back to our hotel afterwards, and all we did until we fell asleep was play this game. So
That's awesome.
highly recommend it. And then Yes Your Grace. Hey, Yes Your Grace is a game that I deeply love, and will probably be my game of the year next year because their new game is out for demo right now. I'm so excited. So Yes Your Grace, I think it's called Winterfall is the new one, but yeah, so this is Yes Your Grace. It is a resource management, extremely story driven, kind of choose your own adventure. There are elements where if you don't, you can make choices in the game, and sometimes they turn out as you expected, and sometimes you think to yourself, that seems like a bad idea, but I'll go with it. And you can't always, I will say that it's not a predictable game, but like in a good way. Like there are plenty of things that'll happen in this game that I remember breaking the game at one point, like kind of pseudo breaking it because I super didn't trust one of these characters to a point that I didn't interact with part of the narrative. And then by the time that I did, it was kind of too old of a plot point to make sense at that point in the game. Like they clearly had thought that I was going to interact with this, and I hadn't. And that's not a slight against the game. I actually think that's a positive because I had grown to love these characters so much that I didn't want this obvious awful thing to happen.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, the new one's coming out, Winterfall, I believe, and I hope that it is even as half as good as this game. I loved
the art's beautiful too.
Yeah, extremely. I mean, I also feel like
I
the
love
trailer's
pixel
not
art
even
like this.
Yeah, I feel like the trailer's not even giving it full like justice to how beautiful some of these scenes can. But yeah, love this game.
Yeah,
I think everyone should
wonderful.
play it.
Yes.
And that brings it to me. I am thinking about playing Heroes of the Storm right now. I think I even brought this as a game. No, I guess I didn't. But the reason I didn't bring Heroes of the Storm is I don't think people should play it. I swear
you
we've
did
talked
bring
about
it in
this.
the earliest rounds.
Okay.
Heroes of the Storm versus the Quarry.
Well, it's also honorable. So there we go.
It's both.
The next one for me is Into the Breach. I know that Clever Diversion mentioned FTL, and Into the Breach got what I wish FTL had gotten, which is a sponsorship from Netflix to continue to develop their game. and they came out with a beautiful expansion with so much extra content. The things I like about Into the Breach are nothing is random, and you can sit on a turn for an entire day and realize just a wonderful way of doing things. And it's a beautiful set of puzzles. And it has another banger of a soundtrack. Then I have Peglin, which y'all know me. I love a good roguelike. And one of my favorite games of all time is Peggle.
Yes.
So when I heard about a Peggle-based roguelike where you're a little cute goblin and you're just going around playing Peggle to defeat enemies, this is it, y'all. Like, I might bring this next year. It's phenomenal. And this is the trailer for it. This is the whole game. It looks exactly like this, but with a good roguelike, every run feels like this has got to be the run. This is it. And that's every time. Every time feels like that. And after that, Hollow Knight. I've been replaying Hollow Knight, especially this year, and it's still good. I didn't bring it because we already brought Hollow Knight. I'm going to skip Cult of the Lamb. I recently went back to Cult of the Lamb, and it's just not enough. It is beautiful art, and the dream of Cult of the Lamb is really impressive and exciting, but the game itself just doesn't live up.
I think there has been some DLC in the past couple of months, but I also haven't played the game, so I don't know how much it actually adds.
Yeah, I think we brought it for Worsties also.
No, I believe that. Well, I'm not sure. It's a good question. And finally, for me, on my honorable mentions, I'd like to bring Vampire Survivors. And the reason is it spawned an entire genre of game. You know, we've seen a lot of games do this very recently. For instance, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds with the Battle Royale genre. And we've seen Hearthstone bring about this renaissance of digital card games, and Vampire Survivors spawned a game coined. At least I've heard from Rather Sunless that the game type is a bullet heaven instead of a bullet hell, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
And I have been recently playing Vampire Survivors in cooperative mode. And you know what? I'm also going to add Brotato to this list because I think Brotato is a better Vampire Survivors. And it may be one of the best roguelike games I've ever played.
Nice.
Yeah, we had a huge amount of fun doing Brotato and Vampire Survivors, I think last summer or the summer before that.
I believe last summer was Brotato because I was still in graduate school.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is the end. Are we prepared to at least go to the final round, at least addressing the Baldur's Gate 3 Elden Ring question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do we have an estimation on the name of the round?
Did I bring Elden Ring? Hold on. Who brought these? Let's see. Nominations. Okay. I brought Elden Ring, so it's up to me. And the other one was Baldur's Gate, which was brought by Hale Noxon.
Yeah, I think
well,
we could do peak fantasy. Right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Because it is. It's, these are the ultimate forms, the most advanced Pokemon evolutions of each genre. And they're both doing really new things for their respective year. I think that they both deserve, their own year to win their own Game of the Year, and I think they did at the Game Awards, right?
Nice. I think so.
Yeah, Elden Ring got it. in the official.
And so did Baldur's Gate,
Yep.
as far as I know.
Yeah.
But which one has the better story?
Well, I'm going to put these foolish ambitions to rest right away.
Which one is the stronger?
You're going to command the Neil.
Elden Ring is beautiful in a way that the Linux system administrator interface of Baldur's Gate just can't give you the satisfaction of mastering. There's a quality of Souls-like games that gives you this pride of mastery and excitement of exploration, given these, this newfound confidence that you have in yourself that is quickly squashed, but it's not something that I've been able to experience in anything but a Souls-like.
Now,
And
if I can cut in very briefly, I am your good friend who's been trying to get you to play Souls games forever. I was unsuccessful in doing so, except for
why do you have to do me
with
like
the
this?
exception of this one thing. So what was it about Elden Ring that you latched onto that drove you away from the previous Souls likes? What's different about Elden Ring?
It's better. So Elden Ring is a more attractive game to me in these sets of Soul games for several reasons. One of which is reliability of gameplay. I had so many technical problems trying to play the other Dark Souls games, and I just kind of got bored with them, which didn't happen in Elden Ring. When I played Elden Ring, it the open world kept me from getting bored, because there is a curiosity that is inherent to the world that you explore in Elden Ring that, like Carbon Speed Dating said, it made me think about the game while I was, going about my day. I was thinking about what I was going to do in Elden Ring. I thought about, well, what if I hit the throne with, is that a secret passage? Why are there so many ghosts in this area? I bet if I got that big, long, curvy sword and I got really good with that, that would be a lot of fun. And these questions and ambitions, and the challenge of it brought me a passion and care for the game that I wasn't getting anywhere else. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Oh,
thank you.
Also, there was a very important reason that I'm sure I'll remember in a moment, but I think we should talk about Baldur's Gate 3.
I actually have a few things to share about Elden Ring, if that is all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was in the same boat of I played about 5 minutes of Dark Souls 1 and maybe 2 hours of Dark Souls 2 and a good chunk of Dark Souls 3. I gave that one its fair shot, but didn't complete any of them. And I'm no stranger to difficult games. I didn't need to get good, but I did just fall off. Got bored. And I didn't with Elden Ring. First to beat it, I think, in the house.
Yep, absolutely.
But played through it all, not 100%, but lots and lots of completion. And just, you speak to the exploration part of it, and that is such a huge deal with this, because you just compare the linear nature of the old Dark Souls, and the old Dark Souls did have good moments of discovery, right? There's the famous hidden wall behind a hidden wall, behind at the end of a secret path, that leads you to one of the coolest moments in, I think that was Dark Souls 1.
Yep.
And numerous other cases like that. But nothing in those games compares to the CO for Riverwell. Like, not even close.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't think it would if the CO for Riverwell was at the end of a linear path and the way you had to go. It would be cool, but it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't be that moment of realizing that, man, this elevator has been going for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to see what it reveals.
I remember running upstairs and just desperate to talk to anybody about what I had just found when I found the Siona River well. It's because it's in Tears of the Kingdom, when you enter a dungeon or you find a cave, you know what you're going to expect. You're going to expect 10 minutes of something interesting that these developers have written and designed for you. But with Elden Ring, when you find a cave, you never know what you're going to find inside this area. It could double the size of the game for you. It could be something that maybe you are one of the first to experience. And that's one of the things I enjoyed most about playing this game is it was also on release. And something that ruins games for me is when people are just so familiar with the game already that it feels like a waste of time for me to experience it. People have already played Dark Souls quite a lot. They're all, there's no one I can really tell about my experience in Dark Souls, and they'll say like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible! Show me." Whereas I got the chance to share that experience with people.
I was gonna say in Elden Ring, we got that chance almost every day for a few weeks straight of like finding something that you don't think other people have seen yet, getting excited, saying, you boot up your game and stream it to me, and then we'll compare maps, and that's the feeling that me and Dixon had for Morrowind. And it's been a long time since we got that level of like, you're finding things out so you can tell your friends, right? You feel valuable in the gaming community because like, I did not know about the well until Will ran up and said, you need to explore this thing. Like, you don't even know that there's a whole other section of the map. And that was really exciting. And like, I remember going to the South Island first and, finding a few hidden catacombs. Like, those all were opportunities to provide value to your friend group that this game offered that was almost Hollow Knight-esque in its excitement level. But then there's Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
And who can stand against Baldur's Gate 3?
So the person who brought Baldur's Gate 3 today is not present. I have a few things
to say about these two.
I would love that.
I'll preface this with saying that I have not played Elden Ring, even though I have watched many, many hours of it just from watching y'all play it and watching other people play it. And it is a beautiful game. Like, artistically, I think that even though Baldur's Gate is like graphically very beautiful, it doesn't do the atmospheric beauty that Elden Ring does. Where are the glowing plants? Like, sure, there's the Underdark with its glowing mushrooms, but it's not like the big landscapes of fog and trees, and just Elden Ring absolutely has inspired so much artwork just from its landscape design. And I've personally been inspired by the creature design, whereas with Baldur's Gate, the creature design feels more based off of like classic fantasy creature design. And sure, there's like a couple monsters that are very specific to D&D or D&D's specific takes on classic fantasy monsters, But with Elden Ring, it's like, sure, you've got some big ugly rats, but then you've got lion-headed man beasts with dragon tails? Okay. Never seen that before. Or like, what's that thing with worms coming out of its eyeballs? That's new. Or, oh, is that a giant hand? Okay. Like, Elden Ring has fantastic creature design and art, and I think it wins on those matters for me. And I'm sure we will get to this, but does Elden Ring have story? Or it does have some story, and I'm sure we'll get into details about that.
What a
But
wonderful, just pierce
the
it right in the heart. You're correct.
Yes, like I'm sure it has some story that there is to uncover, not nearly as deep as Baldur's Gate 3, but a thing that's always been was hard for me with getting into Elden Ring when I tried to play it at first was that the world doesn't seem I just can't grok the setting for Elden Ring. It's like, oh yeah, there's this big magic place, big magic thing happened, and people are doing stuff. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Where are the children? Are there children in this world? No. What's that lady do? Does she just sit in a cave and eat moss? Like, does she just sustain herself on moss? Is that just what she does? There's
dream.
no, like, even if there's story, there's little, like, cohesion to the world building. Like with Baldur's Gate, if there's people, there's children. And if there's people living in a place for longer than a couple of days, there's a means for them to get food in that place. And I feel like just the world building of Elden Ring doesn't really go that far, and maybe it doesn't need to go that far. That's part of the fun of it, is that it's beautiful and fun.
Yeah, and I will say that like it's in the similar way that Dark Souls, like I do like Dark Souls, but I like it more when I've watched the 2-hour long lore video before playing or seeing it. I'm like,
has supplemented the story of the entire Dark Souls series on his shoulders for the whole world.
And I know that that's almost like an intentional part of the game design. You know, like we've had this discussion about Skyrim, about like, or just Bethesda games in general, like how much they rely on like fans to do the heavy lifting. And I don't really think that's what Dark Souls is doing. I think what Dark Souls is doing is leaving it purposely vague, and it just so happens that there is an ecosystem for people to talk about it.
Right.
And I think that's great. But also, I don't know if I would be able to like get the meaningful context out of these things without, you know, looking at the guide. And I'm perhaps the only one here who, growing up, I didn't look at guides. I didn't know that there were like optimal strategies in Pokemon. I didn't know that wasn't part of my gaming experience, and to this day is not a part of my gaming experience. So the idea of like having game, I guess, homework, like, and that sounds perhaps stronger than I mean it to, but essentially,
No,
like,
I get it.
Like, I like that I can, you know, when I play Baldur's Gate, I didn't know what a mind flayer was before Baldur's Gate. It didn't change my experience. I still had a great time.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Ball was. Like, I didn't get in the way of my enjoyment of the game.
Yeah. I wanted to bring up for Elden Ring that, first of all, as a longtime Dark Souls fan, dyed in the wool, I think there is a difference between Elden Ring's story delivery and Dark Souls story delivery because of its open world. Right? Earlier we talked about its open world being a huge, huge selling point on distinguishing it from the Dark Souls series, which is, you know, great that it got so many people into it. But for long-term Dark Souls fans, it took one of the weaker parts of the Dark Souls series that I still really enjoyed, which is weaving the story together for yourself, which is how much you know about the story is how hard you've worked to get it, and also your own personal fan theories that you're able to develop, kind of like the early days of, like, you know, Lost or some of the other, like, mysterious threading of things. It's like you can generate your own story that's interesting and relevant to yourself. Several novels do this as well, but because it's open world, you're allowed to miss so much now that kind of falls apart, right? It's already a shaky ladder, and now it's gone, I think, one step too far, so that ladder is falling over now. I remember showing Line Arc Line, a major boss, a full ending in Elden Ring that I discovered from exploring the root system of like, I think it's Deep in the Roots, which is a reference to Japanese mythology, and it's really, really cool. It's where Susanoo, yeah,
Susanoo.
ends up. And so that's a really important thing, right? That's a whole ending. And you have to get there, leave, talk to a lady, sleep again, transport somewhere else, come back 3 times. And then when on the 3rd time that you come back, they turn into a boss that you can kill. And then you're able to get the ending, right?
Like, is that not the definition of like hostile gameplay, to be honest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Like, that sounds,
but it's supposed to
rough.
be hidden in this way of like, oh, you're supposed to or the community is supposed to organically figure this out, and it's really, really rare at the beginning, which is, I guess, how game designers are obfuscating their endings. Like it's impossible to hold a secret from the internet for very long.
Well, it's
But
like,
I remember
think,
showing Line Arc Line
Yeah.
that thing, and Line Arc Line saying, that kind of sucks.
it does, and that's kind of my reaction to it as well. It's like, I've seen Dark Souls games do this well. I remember with one of the DLCs where like basically the DLC was, there is a new person in the environment, and if you talk to them, you'll get transported to a new land. And I'm like, I think that's a great idea for a DLC. Something that does require you to do a little exploring in an area that you're already familiar with to find what's new. But having to go back 3 times to solve the Bridge Trolls mystery doesn't sound like a fun game to me. Because at some point, when am I supposed to just be allowed to discover this by myself? Because I gotta be honest, I don't see myself doing that unless by like accident, like in the worst possible, not in like a fun accident, like a bad accident,
It's
like
just
my game
because
crashed and I reloaded 3 times.
the Dark Souls community knows a boss room when they see it and will never stop pestering the game until they find that boss. Like,
Sure,
it's just relying on the community to be insane about this game that we're all obsessed with. And, I admire that, but I think it is kind of a weakness of Elden Ring that deserves to be talked about in the finals.
Yeah, and I feel like both of these games kind of encourage the community to talk about stories, but in opposite ways. Whereas Elden Ring
one is way
Elden Ring encourages its community to talk about the story because they're trying to figure it out and puzzle through the things and tell each other where all the hidden story is. Whereas Baldur's Gate is like, oh, I took this radically different path. Let me tell you the deep intricacies of this path. And somebody else's experience can be completely different. And so you can kind of compare notes to flesh out this story that's so deep that a single person cannot touch all of it.
And there are ways to find secret interaction. There are total cutscenes that most people will not interact. Like, there are secrets to discover that you can find through organic ways. Like, you have an idea. You're like, I think that, logically, if someone's, on fire, if I throw water at them, they'll go, they're not be on fire anymore. It's like, I have this great idea. There's a water mechanic in the game. Why not? And the game rewards you for thinking that way. And this is something we talked about in the past for like Red Dead, where the game rewards you for thinking creatively and expecting something from the game. That's wonderful like that. But like, if you had that same interaction in Elden Ring, the game's like kind of like, if you force someone to do something 3 times, that's not a reward. That's like, I don't know, almost like a pity party at that point. It's like, all right, fine, you can have something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's really rewarding. I think that's kind of the opposite.
So structure-wise, I do want to provide an opportunity. We talked earlier about the things that are wrong with Baldur's Gate 3. So, one of them being the UI and figuring out the menu system for some of the magic classes. What other things can we bring as criticisms for Baldur's Gate 3 now that we dunked so thoroughly on Elden Ring?
Definitely. So one thing I would say is that I don't think that they split their quests quite evenly. Like, there's basically a meme at this point where there's a very solid trajectory from Act 1 and Act 2, and then you get to Act 3, and then it's like, all right, have every side quest in the game now. And it can get very overwhelming, and a lot of people just stop at that point.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it. I haven't had a chance to get back into it because I've been busy, but that's not going to keep me from playing. But for a lot of folks, that's kind of where they end the game in a lot of ways, which is very disappointing. So I think that they could have done a little bit more I don't know. It felt a little like we had to fix. We were working on part 1 and part 2 for so long that it became like perfect and pristine. Or, I'm not saying that it is, but we're working on the narrative. It's a very strong narrative, and then it's like, all right, now we're just gonna quickly wrap up everything in Act 3, and it's not always as neat as I think that they would have imagined it to be.
Yeah, I think I've heard similar things about Act 3. I haven't gotten there yet, and I'm excited to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll look for that and try to like power through it if it is that clunky.
I don't think so. I will say it's not quite as horrible as I'm describing. I'm just saying,
Okay.
like, if
Some people
I'm
have just lost
taking,
interest.
and it can feel very overwhelming because at that point, minimum you've probably put in 100 hours.
Yeah.
So the idea of getting there and being like, oh, well, here's the second half of the game, and it's like, okay.
Okay.
So I want to acknowledge a point that we brought up earlier that I really liked in the first part, which is both of these are very, very long games.
Mm-hmm.
We earlier brought up value per hour. Do you think any one of these games wins out on value per hour?
I personally would think Baldur's Gate, just in terms of the sheer
Hmm.
quality of the craft, because I feel,
Mm.
and this is kind of what people like about Dark Souls games, that grind, that feeling like you're overcoming something. But that's value per hour in the sense that they perhaps artificially inflate how difficult something is, so that you have to be like pixel perfect to be able to do these fights. And I feel like that's a bit of an artificial inflation on the value per hour. A skilled player can probably get through Elden Ring in, I don't know, 40 minutes or something.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we
And
have
you can't-
several speed
and
runs.
and I think you can get through what is essentially the core of the game in 40 minutes. I mean,
Mhm.
when you're talking about the environment and whatnot, but there's no way to do that in Baldur's Gate. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's speedruns of Baldur's Gate, but like the entire point of Baldur's Gate, even if you put all the cutscenes back to back, valued per hour, it's still going to be greater.
Yeah, like I've played
Sure.
only a couple hours of Elden Ring, and I was just fighting rats in a cave. It was fun in some ways, but the fact that it was I don't know, the kind of like play it until you get good attitude was maybe just not the thing for me, and maybe I do just need to play it until I get good and start having more fun. But I feel like Baldur's Gate, you can still walk into things that are too hard for you, which I appreciate. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
does still have that like, oh, maybe this boss is too much. Maybe you should come back after you've trained.
I spent 2 days on a boss fight once. Yes, I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Wow.
And maybe that's also partly, my inexperience, but I was doing pretty well in the game, and then I hit a boss, and I'm like, okay, this is 2 days.
Mhm.
I want to.
I would like to
Definitely.
Yeah.
defend the concept of gameplay here, because I think our talks recently have been skewing pretty hard into the narrative. And lest we forget, these are games, right? And that the grind at the core of Dark Souls is not a grind in the traditional sense, right? It's not a
Yeah,
kill this guy 5,000 times to make number go up.
it's not a
Mhm.
clicker game or something like that.
It is a grind on you, right? It is a sharpening of your skills and your technique, and it's all like moment to moment. That value per hour metric goes down in Dark Souls when you're just slamming your face into Margit or Melania, right? But then you beat them. Then you finish that fight, and you get to look back at all of
Mhm.
the tribulations that you were put through, and the hardships that you suffered through, and the skills you learned along the way, and that feeling, that value, I think, is just as good to me as an excellent narrative payoff, as a setup to a mystery with a satisfying ending. It's the same for me. I mean, same but different. Same quality, different taste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really agree with that. I think that we
Mhm.
could also evaluate these games on their value of making us better gamers.
Sure. I mean, I can say that just from Baldur's Gate perspective that I'll come to, where I am better at games now. I never played anything that really required, I don't want to say skill, but kind of skill.
Brush your
Killing
shoulders
the
off a
warning
little.
Sims.
Well, it's just like, very often, like I loved the quarry, but with the exception of being able to click the A button particularly fast during a cutscene, not like a skill-based game. Anyone can, and in my opinion, should play a game like that. But the idea of being tactical, learning what advantages and disadvantages different types of strategies have. Like I said, when I was, hitting my head on the wall for that boss fight, that's probably not a boss fight that most people are going to struggle with. I did because I was encountering, my first kind of proper boss strategy that I needed to overcome, and I say this from the perspective of someone that, with most of these kind of games, I never finished Pokemon. I liked playing it. I was terrible at it. I would get stuck on the ice maze and I never got past that. Or I remember I played Harry Potter on the Game Boy and there was a match these movements puzzle and I had 3 save files that ended there. I just I can say certainly that this game not only improved my technical skill, but like you were mentioning before, I could get through the controller for the UI pretty darn quick. I was getting pretty good at it.
Yeah, I was very impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also thought as a avant-garde strategy, we could have a section where the person who brought the game switches and says all the bad things about the game and then praises the other game. Work against your own self-interest.
Yeah.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah,
you guys were talking
if you
a little
want
bit about this already.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Let me think. So I would say that some of the problems with Baldur's Gate is, for one, can be very overwhelming in terms of UI. I worry about kind of sharing this game. I think I have this game that I've been giving to people because I love it so much and I know that they're going to love it. My sister, I know she's going to love this game. Know it. But I'm a little worried about the learning curve of let's just quickly sit down and it's just going to flood the screen with tutorial and UI elements and it's just I'm a little worried that somebody might not want to stick with that because it can be very overwhelming. It's I look at, for instance, Heroes of the Storm or games like that where I imagine this makes perfect sense to someone who already knows what they're looking at, but there's plenty of parts of in terms of the technical aspect of Baldur's Gate that I feel can make people feel very overwhelmed. There are ways to simplify it. If you want to play a simpler class, I made kind of the mistake of playing perhaps the most complicated class on my first playthrough.
Yeah, you did Sorcerer, right?
Yeah, I did Sorcerer and
Wild Magic Sorcerer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I thought it would be funny, and it was. It was very funny. I mean, it is very funny. But I might perhaps recommend somebody play Paladin or Barbarian or Fighter or something just to keep it simpler.
Druid's really fun. You can be a bear.
Yep.
Another complaint I would say is that there are elements. I mean, a big complaint that I've seen people are talking about is that not all of the characters are treated with equal levels of care with the writing. In particular, Will is particularly kind of left behind. Most of his story was kind of gutted.
I was going to ask that if there's favoritism.
Yeah, so every character in the game has their narrative mission, this is the Mass Effect, go do their loyalty test. And they made Will's optional in the 3rd act. It's not great. Yeah, so they keep introducing more love and craft into even more side character love interest, and I don't think they've done anything with Will since the beginning. I really don't. And for what the stuff they did have, apparently they've gutted most of it from the beta. So a lot of times the characters that, I'm not saying that's only one of the, 6 companions or whatever, but they're not all treated with equal levels of care. And I feel like that was a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah. What do you think, Will, for Elden Ring negatives?
Oh yeah, Elden Ring is terrible. Zero, dating potential. No, but
Hey, you can date a
You're
few
just-
of you
Yeah,
can
you
date a
just
few
gotta-
of them.
You got no
Sure, you
bitches?
can like
You're maidenless.
okay, what that looks like in Elden Ring, the dating element of it is a moment where you're like, I think I'm married now.
Yeah, you are. That's true to real life. You know, if you
Yeah, I
give a
was gonna
girl
say.
enough
Sure.
grapes,
But like you're not
she
sure.
will marry
Nobody will
you.
tell you. And that's one of the consistent problems with Elden Ring is they're like, so you already know this. All right. I don't know. Go do what you think is best. And you're like, I don't know, man. And it's the classic Dark Souls storytelling problem. Whereas, the narrative in Baldur's Gate is better. And a good UI, especially on PC, is often, good UIs for PC look different from good UIs from video games. And just because there are a lot of options doesn't mean that all those options aren't either necessary or fun. And I played StarCraft 2 when it came out. And that was my first real-time strategy game. And I remember being very impressed after a bit of time playing it with the user interface because it was so well crafted for the tools that I had on this, game playing machine PC. And I think Baldur's Gate, once I see it and once I, use it and get through some of the gameplay, I'll probably feel the same. It's just watching someone else use this menu system that is so foreign, and all of the symbology, all of all the bits look the same to me, and it just looks super easy to just get lost in those menus. But I'm sure I'll get used to it, just like
I don't
carbon
know.
speed dating did.
I don't know. I'm 200 hours in. I still details every time I do a spell.
Yeah, like the
And
Elden Ring
I have
part of it.
misclicked. Yeah, I have misclicked. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that's
I think
Yeah.
when I play Baldur's Gate, I'll remember more moments from Baldur's Gate than I will. Wow. I remember some moments from Elden Ring. Some parts of Elden Ring, I think I ruined for myself by using the hired help function. I did not explore several of the areas on my own first before summoning help in, and truly, like, a lot of that game is a bit of a blur for me, and I wish I'd spent I wish I'd done a couple things differently. And the great thing about that is I'm pretty excited for my second playthrough of Elden Ring. Because Elden Ring is bad.
Well, so here's what I'll say, right? There's a thing in gaming that I've been wanting to, elucidate for a while, which is there's a difference between being shown a game and discovering a game for yourself alone at your own pace, right? And a lot of times when we're really excited about a game, we'll be like, an overexcited gold, guide, for Praise the Sun, where we lead people by the nose through all the areas, kill all the encounters before they even get there, and then point excitedly at the mystery walls and swing at them. And like, that's really fun for us, but is that really that great for the person that we're with, right? In the one hand, it can be really nice to have like a well-meaning guide you through stuff. But I think it's also has that danger of being like, you're never going to play that level for the first time ever again. And now you know all the secrets. And, for me...
And you discovered none of them.
Yeah, exactly. That is a danger that I think Dark Souls and Elden Ring, by extension, rests a lot on that sense of discovery and that sense of feeling like there's genuine mystery and you get to unravel it yourself. And the benefit of like excitedly, showing your friends is always balanced by that quiet, meditative, you want to find some of the secrets too and share them with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like basically a built-in, almost backseat gamer.
Yeah.
Where like you sometimes the best thing to do is to let somebody walk right past the mystery wall. It's gonna hurt, but it's for the best.
Yeah. It's hard to do that.
Okay, so we've gone for a bit on this. What do you feel about wrapping it up? Because
Yes, I would love to wrap up. I have one thing I want to state about Baldur's Gate 3, which is my biggest disappointment, despite my voting for it in last round, which is it once again limits your active party size to under the number of maximum characters you can hire.
That does hurt.
There's
And
a mod for that.
It's the only mod I think I'm gonna put into the game. It's the only mod. Yeah.
Like it
hurts.
has gameplay support and graphical support and performance support for all 6, 8 people.
I know
you can get.
I know why they did it. I think that there could have been better ways around it, and I think the reason why is just because the combat would have been almost real at that point. You're just bringing an army with you. I think you could have gotten around that by allowing the players to walk around with everybody, but just say, "Here are the 4 people I'm bringing to the fight."
Yeah.
Or just make the fights harder. Just make the fights harder.
And it's especially hard when you do have, if you are playing it multiplayer, like my best friend played it multiplayer with 2 other of her friends, and so because they had a 3-person party, they could only bring one of the characters with them per outing. And so they barely got to complete any of the characters' storylines because they just had such a big group, a big, massive group of 3 players.
And the game penalizes you for that too, because if you don't spend time with characters, they won't have an opinion about you. I remember I got to basically the end of Act 1 before I realized that Shadowheart hadn't told me anything because I didn't bring her anywhere because I already had a cleric.
She didn't tell you about her trauma and her wolves?
No, and then I was standing in camp and I was going through the characters. I'm like, why are you neutral to me? I'm 70 hours into this game.
Yeah.
Have we talked or?
Yeah.
Not really, apparently. I almost to the part where I almost felt like, in a kind of a way, it felt like the way the game introduced it, it felt a little almost silly. Like, it felt like I was breaking the game, and the fact that, like I said with Yes Your Grace, it's like, it shouldn't have taken, the game didn't expect this. Like, I was supposed to be bringing this character with me places.
The 2 things that I want to bring up, again, I've already touched on in earlier rounds is good thing for Elden Ring, hilarious message system.
Yes.
We just had someone who was at the windmill place and he had a note that said, "Watch head," and then he ducked exactly as the windmill came and would have hit his head. It's just
beautiful.
Some of the messages that I've put in Elden Ring are some of the best messages I've ever made in my Dark Souls career. And granted, this is copied from the legacy of the Dark Souls series, so you've always been able to have this fun, but try jumping. How many memes and jokes did we have that year in 2022 that was just based on the message system,
Yeah. Don't give up, Skeleton.
It says a lot about...
Yeah, don't give up, Skeleton.
Don't give up, Skeleton. There's a lot about the multiplayer of Baldur's Gate that I think that the multiplayer of Elden Ring is better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I don't think Baldur's Gate should be multiplayer.
Yeah, I agree.
I really don't. I like I said, I know why they did it, and it makes sense, and I'm kind of glad they did, in the sense of, I love having a couch co-op game or, an online game I can play with someone that's actually good, but I don't think it works. I really don't. It would be like adding multiplayer to, I don't know, kind of any narrative game. I don't. Great idea.
That's what I was exactly going to bring up in my last one. The second thing is, I think even offering multiplayer in Baldur's Gate 3, it held it back in some pretty significant ways. I know that Linearch Line tried, and was pretty excited about having a multiplayer experience of, Baldur's Gate 3 right when it started, but it just was so difficult to make it work correctly that I think it was a big turnoff for a lot of people, myself included. And, I think that's just a negative of Baldur's Gate 3 that I think we addressed a little bit, but I think I will say that I don't think that
I don't think that it's a mark against Baldur's Gate at its core. I almost feel like it's an unsuccessful mod. Like it doesn't even. I'm so surprised that it exists because it just does not work in game. Like there's
Really?
too many pieces. Like first off, you end up being very overpowered, obviously, because you're not dealing with AI. You also end up the narrative is kind of confusing because each character has their own individual opinions on each on your party, and I'm curious what would happen, for instance, if one character was doing great, but one character like really loved one of the players and they really hated one of the others, because in narrative the players the companions can leave. So like does that mean that like they'll leave even if one player is doing really well? Like I said, it feels off. That's why I compare it to a mod, in the sense of it was never intended, and yet here it is, because the rest of the game doesn't work with it. Like I said, I don't think it takes away from the core, but it was basically a disappointing promise. I think that's where the negatives come to me.
Yeah, like can some characters be aligned to one of the players in your party but not to the others? Yeah, that seems really complicated.
And the way that it's set up, only one character can interact and have cutscenes. So you don't duplicate cutscenes. So that seems kind of confusing
Yep.
about how that's going to work. Like I think it pulls you out too much
I
of the
agree.
game to make it work. It's not like, I feel like this would work, for instance, in plenty of games. Like I said, I think it works fine with Divinity because Divinity doesn't have cutscenes. Divinity is just exactly what you see on screen, at least by memory. So it doesn't get in the way so much as it does with such a strongly narratively written game. And maybe they could have found ways around it, but it certainly didn't seem like a priority for them to make that work in any real way.
I'm really not sure which one I'm going to vote for, but I'm leaning towards Elden Ring because a lot of my good Zoom backgrounds for meetings have been ripped straight from Elden Ring.
Oh yeah.
And their bosses.
All
I
of
have
my
one where it's just Melania's Sanctum, and then I can like lean back and be like, "Uh-oh."
Oh no.
And nobody in the meeting room really gets that, but
Yeah.
I get a very good laugh out of
The
it.
boss music. Yeah, you could just play that in the Zoom meeting.
I'm always a fan of those like subtle ones like that. I think that like it's in the same way that you want like a subtle T-shirt.
Oh
I think
yeah.
that's a great idea.
I can't stop myself from leaning towards Elden Ring because it was a very positive experience for me, and I know that Baldur's Gate will be, but I want to play Elden Ring more than I want to play Baldur's Gate, and that's what it comes down to for me.
Yeah.
That's fair. I will say that I hope that after this conversation, you're more, inclined to pick up Baldur's Gate, because I do think specifically you will get a lot out of it. Like
I
I
mean,
think
we could
it's a
play
very
it.
personal. It's a very personal, at least in my opinion, it's a very personal journey, a very heartwarming, beautiful story that doesn't always go the places you think it's going to go. I hope that it's something that you experience.
Yeah. We could play it right after this. Do we want to do a canvassing, Sunless? How are you feeling? What are you leaning towards?
I mean, I have to lead it to Elden Ring. It's close enough that they're both good, and Elden Ring's the one I finished.
Fair enough.
I have not played a whole lot of Baldur's Gate, not as much as I should, and I'm definitely planning on getting back to it. I did enjoy what I played of it.
I will say, here's a point I'd like to bring up too. This feels like it runs into a similar issue that the Legend of Zelda game ran into, where do you think that Elden Ring is doing enough new stuff, or is it just Dark Souls Take Two? Like same way that like Tears of the Kingdom, Tears of the Kingdom did do new stuff, but like it's like what it's bringing to games.
I think it's actually doing the exact same thing that Baldur's Gate 3 is doing.
Yeah.
Which is Baldur's Gate 3 is finally the enormous narrative turn-based RPG for the masses. Right? It's Baldur's Gate 3 is just Divinity Original Sin 2, but finally good enough.
But finally plot.
Finally approachable enough. Finally playable by more than the hardcore fans. And Elden Ring, I think, is the same thing. It's finally Dark Souls for the masses. right?
I mean, I guess I'd like to just ask, what do you think about it makes it for the masses? Because it seems like it's just Dark Souls. Like, is it easier, more approachable? It
It's
seems just like Dark, and this is just my perspective because I haven't played either. It seems exactly the same.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, right? I think to the uneducated, Baldur's Gate 3 looks exactly like Divinity Original Sin 2, right?
Yeah, but it has
They're
the
both
selling point of hot
of
vampire. Like, it's not a hard sell, I think.
I don't know, man. Their character designers didn't change between games. We'll put it that way.
For Divinity?
Yeah, the same
Oh.
character designer.
Okay, I believe you. Like I said, I feel like with Elden Ring, it's just like, and this is, we've talked about their art direction before, but it's certainly different than Dark Souls. Like, they have a new direction, they have a new motifs they're working with. But if you were to just play me a clip without the UI, without the mount, I don't necessarily think I could tell you that you're not playing Dark Souls.
A lot of it is the approachability of the open world. A lot of it is the ability to choose a different path, right?
But doesn't Dark Souls already do that?
No.
No? Okay.
No, in Dark Souls, if you're stuck on a bus, you're stuck on that boss.
I mean,
Okay.
I think that Elden Ring has a one key feature for me that makes it stand out from all other Dark Souls games, and that's color.
Yeah.
Also
There are
true.
more colors in this game.
Very good
Totally
point.
agree.
Yeah, now
Very
there's
pretty
gold
game.
and black.
Yeah.
I was gonna and red.
Oh yeah,
And red.
there's red. Yeah.
Little bits of blue,
Lot of red.
maybe.
Hey, that's a
Wow.
You can
lot.
see the sun sometimes.
Yeah, it's
Or
great.
the sky.
Yeah.
But like, it reminds me of that joke about, it's just the opening cutscene. It's basically the arisen, the embers. This is this game's Estes flashes. This is this game's bonfires. And I know that's it's their bread and butter, but I am curious to know from a player's perspective where those differences are.
A lot of it is just a collection of little things that aren't super perceptible unless you're playing, right? It's the presence of a jump button. It's the tightness of the controls. It's the speed of the movement and the attacks. Just ever so slightly faster and ever so slightly more fluid than in like Dark Souls 3, especially 2 and 1.
Yeah.
It's the open world. It's the like seamlessness of exploration. It is Dark Souls 3, but with a bunch more of the really painful little bits filed off without losing any of its character or depth or interest. It's just all of the pain points, all of the what we would call quit points, right? Of Dark Souls 3 are gone. And now it's everyone who wanted to try it finds themselves sticking with it until they're done.
Because I will say that was something that I saw. Like, I saw people that hadn't picked up Dark Souls playing Elden Ring. From my perspective, very confusing.
Yeah, so I want to clear up just like
an introductory game.
A small thing about the earlier Dark Souls. They all open up to multiple branching paths pretty quickly, but each of those paths features their own difficulty spikes that if you do not progress past them, there is no other way. So you can go into the catacombs, or you can go up to the castle in Dark Souls Original, or you can go down into the ghost place. Those are 3 paths right there, but they're each very difficult in their own ways. So you have to find a way through one of those. And in Elden Ring, you can just mess around in a field with your horse for like 2 hours until you're strong enough to beat the lake dragon. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I don't know. I think that something that gameplay brings, especially in Elden Ring, is a sense of pride over yourself and your achievements. And it's not something that mostly there's something to be said about dexterity's place in a video game and its ability to bring you and your experience more in line with the character that you're playing.
Yeah.
And with Dark Souls, they bring those two together so effectively that it makes it really exciting to be in that world. And it's not something that I got from the tutorial level of Baldur's Gate, is I never really felt like I was experiencing these things. I felt like I was remote controlling, like with a little joystick,
Oh,
just kind of
that's
running
fair.
around as some other character, and I'm like, well, they sure are in a pickle.
I mean, yeah,
But
no, I agree. I think
but
that, I
in
mean, that's,
Elden Ring, I feel like
yeah,
I'm in a pickle, and
yeah.
I'm the one who can solve it.
No, I
And
think that's perfectly fair. I think that's true. I think that's exactly what the difference between a turn-based game, a what's the opposite of a turn-based game?
Real time.
Real time.
Mhm.
I think that's exactly what those opposing kind of gameplays will lead to experiences like that. I felt less like I was these characters, more like a tactician. I'm
Mhm.
Yeah.
choosing to, navigate them around the map. The places where I felt like those characters was in the conversations, not in the, combat.
Totally.
Yeah. So my vote is going to be for Baldur's Gate 3 in this one. And I
Woo.
know that's, can be surprising to long-term viewers of the channel.
Hey.
As the Dark Souls, fanboy of the thing, I'm going to stick to my original point, which is I think that the open worldness of it hit that one last nail in the coffin for the story fabric that was holding together for me. And, a lot of the game kind of became about just either being underleveled or overleveled, and not really having a cohesive sense of like direction or strong enough story to kind of lead me down those last few difficult paths. And that's why I'm, in the current thing I always do with Dark Souls, which is get till 80% where I can see the end and then stop. So like,
Yeah.
it's one of the things that Baldur's Gate is really compelling in its story for me, and story has been a watchword of our series thus far, but I think even in its gameplay, I still preferred the Dark Souls version of the game. I found Elden Ring to be a, kind of either fast or cheesy in the strats that I wound up using, and maybe that's just because I played full mage. But even as a full mage player, I found that the PvP was really difficult for mages in the early stages of the game, and since it's been patched. But yeah, it just had enough changes that I didn't really jive with and agree with from Dark Souls that it made me want to go back and play Dark Souls 3.
Yeah. I just realized I haven't voted. So let me surprise you and say that I'm voting for Baldur's Gate. It was a piece of art that came into my life right when I needed it, and I'll forever be grateful for that. And it's one I'm excited to continue. Like I've mentioned before, I've been too busy to finish my current run, but I'm already planning my next run. So
Nice.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, and it's gotta be Baldur's Gate for me as well. And like I said, I do think that if we were splitting this into years for 2022, I think that Elden Ring, like the way that I saw that game at conventions affecting people who had never really played that genre of game before was amazing. Like I saw people who had only ever played The Sims and Animal Crossing playing Elden Ring and having a blast. And I'm like, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
you do that. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And like I myself being a big Sims and Animal Crossing player, I do think that Elden Ring would be a good game to. I think it seems like it's the most accessible of the Dark Souls series, if you want to call it that. But I just loved the way I saw it affect gaming culture. But for me personally, Baldur's Gate 3, it's one of those games that I go to sleep thinking about and I wake up in the morning and I am thinking about it still kind of games.
Mm-hmm.
And there's our winner.
Wow.
We have Baldur's
Okay.
Gate 3 with a close
Ooh.
score, winning over Elden Ring as the best game of all time.
It's true.
Wow.
Sorry, of a 2-year period. And that is man, we really got sidetracked there.
I think we forgot the
We
salsa,
we
didn't
came
we?
here to talk about
Yeah.
salsas. Do
Aw.
you
Well, do we just want to save it for next time?
Yeah, it's probably
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the salsas next year.
I just have too much to say about the
yeah.
salsas, so we should just save it for next time.
It'll go
Like,
too
It'll
late.
go
Yeah,
so
it's
long. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this was a nice introduction to that conversation, but I really
Mhm.
think
Red, green, chunky, not.
oh my god,
Yeah.
Smooth.
don't talk to me about chunky salsas.
Yeah.
Corn, beans.
Restaurant style, pineapple.
There's a
Ooh.
lot
Thank
to
you all
cover.
for joining us. I'd like to thank our sponsor for these episodes, but I can't because there aren't any.
They're sponsored by us and our love of the game.
Yes, thank you, game devs. Thank you, people, for making beautiful games.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here and sharing. Everyone who's made it this far, you're a trooper. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our conversations and our thoughts and allowing us to express ourselves. Oh, the Menial says I'm sponsoring. He's sponsoring us now.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
We have a sponsor.
Yeah.
Go
And,
subscribe to Clever Diversion.
Yeah,
That's
let's
good.
And
It's
let's
good
all
content.
like beat Elden Ring all the way to,
Yeah.
before the DLC comes out, and then beat Baldur's Gate 3. I think we can all do it.
Yeah. I'm gonna mix that order up. Maybe I'm gonna beat them both at the same time.
Well,
Right.
Simultaneously.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you next year.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Later.